Jennifer Blake believed in love before she ever believed in herself. She was the girl who filled spiral notebooks with short stories, sketches of characters and half-written poems while other teenagers filled theirs with algebra equations. Her dream was simple but unwavering. One day she would be a writer whose words touched people, maybe even helped them through their darkest moments. And standing beside her, holding her hand at 17, was David Brown. David wasn't just her boyfriend, he was her whole future, or at least that's what she believed back then. With his charming grin and smooth confidence, he had a way of making her feel like the world was already theirs. "You and me, Jen," he'd whispered during senior prom, his tuxedo slightly crooked from dancing too hard. "We're going to be unstoppable. You'll write your little books and I'll take over the business world. Everyone will know our names." She had laughed, pressing her cheek to his chest, not realizing how sharp those words would later cut. "Your little books." At the time she thought it was endearing. A playful nudge. She didn't see the shadow of mockery hiding behind his smile. College came and with it the first cracks in their fairy tale. Jennifer studied English literature, devouring everything from Shakespeare to Maya Angelou, while David pursued business and finance with ruthless ambition. At first he pretended to admire her passion, calling her his dreamer, the perfect counterbalance to his pragmatism. But as his world grew larger, filled with internships, networking dinners and high-profile mentors, hers seemed, at least to him, smaller. "Jen, you can't honestly think this writing thing is going to pay the bills," he told her one night in their shared apartment. He was wearing a crisp shirt, tie loosened, eyes glowing with the adrenaline of a new internship. She had been curled on the couch, notebook in hand, her latest story spilling onto the pages. She closed it slowly, her heart stinging. "It's not about money, David. It's about—" "Don't say passion," he cut her off with a groan, pouring himself a drink. "Passion doesn't put food on the table. Look, you're smart. You could go into teaching or PR or literally anything practical. But this," he waved toward her notebook like it was a childish toy, "this isn't going anywhere." Jennifer had stayed quiet that night, but deep inside something shifted. His words didn't just sting, they carved out a wound that would take years to heal. By the time graduation rolled around, the divide between them had become a canyon. David had already secured a lucrative job at a prestigious firm, walking across the stage with his chin high, while Jennifer clutched her English degree, smiling through the ache in her chest. She tried to tell herself they'd find balance, that love was enough. But David had already begun rewriting their story without her. The final blow came at a reunion dinner with old classmates. It was supposed to be a celebratory evening, a toast to surviving college and stepping into the future together. Jennifer had dressed simply but beautifully, her hair in soft waves, a delicate necklace resting on her collarbone. She had even brought a few printed copies of her short stories in her bag, hoping to share them with friends who remembered her scribbling away in the library. David, however, had other plans. Halfway through the evening, as laughter and clinking glasses filled the air, one of their classmates asked Jennifer how her writing was going. She smiled shyly, ready to explain her small steps, submitting to magazines, keeping up her nightly writing habit. But before she could answer, David spoke. "She's still at it," he said loudly, smirking as he draped an arm over his chair. "Our Jen, the eternal waitress with a pen. Always scribbling, never succeeding." The table erupted into uneasy laughter. Some chuckled out of habit, others out of discomfort, but to Jennifer it all sounded the same: mockery. Her chest tightened, her throat burned, but she forced a smile. "I'm trying," she whispered, but her voice was drowned out by David's booming laughter. "Trying won't cut it in the real world," he added, raising his glass. "Some of us are chasing futures. Others are just chasing fantasies." The words echoed in her ears like poison. Her friends shifted awkwardly, some glancing at her with pity, others avoiding her gaze altogether. Jennifer wanted the ground to swallow her whole. She sat there, frozen, every muscle tense, her heart breaking in a way that felt permanent. She could handle disappointment. She could handle rejection. But to be humiliated, dismissed, and betrayed by the man she had once loved, that was a wound deeper than words. The weeks that followed blurred together. David didn't just distance himself, he left her entirely. No tearful goodbye, no second thoughts. One morning she woke to find his side of the closet empty, his toothbrush gone, and a note on the counter. "You'll be fine. Don't waste your life on fairy tales. That was it. No apology. No explanation. Jennifer held that note in her trembling hands, reading it over and over until the tears blurred the ink. She wanted to scream, to tear it into shreds, to erase every trace of him from her life. But all she could do was sit in silence, clutching her notebook like a lifeline. She thought of the girl she once was, the girl who believed in love more than herself, the girl who thought forever meant something. That girl was gone now, buried under the rubble of David's betrayal. Jennifer packed her things into 2 battered suitcases and moved into a tiny 1-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city. The walls were thin, the radiator clanged all night, and the air smelled faintly of damp plaster. But it was hers. Her own space, however broken, however empty. Each night she sat at the small kitchen table with her notebook trying to write. Some nights the words came in floods. Other nights she stared at the page until the tears spilled instead. She had no family to turn to, her parents had passed years ago and her siblings lived states away, distant in both geography and heart. A few friends checked in, kind enough to bring her groceries or sit with her when the silence became unbearable. But even they could not erase the memory of David's laughter, his cruel voice still ringing in her ears. Waitress with no ambition. The phrase haunted her, replaying each time she tied on her apron for her diner shifts. Each time she counted change for a customer. Each time she dragged herself home at dawn after covering double shifts just to keep the lights on. And yet, deep inside, something stubborn remained. Her notebooks filled page after page. Her pen refused to give up, even when her heart wanted to. And though she didn't know it then, those midnight scribbles, those fragile words, would one day build a bridge to a life David could never have imagined. But that was still far away. For now, Jennifer sat in her dim apartment, staring at her reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror, whispering to herself a single vow. One day I'll prove him wrong. Jennifer's vow, one day I'll prove him wrong, was easy to whisper into the bathroom mirror. Living it was another matter. Reality hit harder than heartbreak. Her 1-bedroom apartment wasn't just modest. It was suffocating. The peeling wallpaper seemed to mock her, the radiator rattled like bones in a coffin, and the thin mattress on the floor did little to soften the weight of her exhaustion. Rent consumed most of her paycheck from the diner and groceries were an afterthought, cans of soup, instant noodles, bread that went stale too quickly. Each morning, she dragged herself into the blue and white uniform of Silver Spoon Diner, tying her apron with hands that trembled from lack of sleep. Customers barked orders, clinking cups and scraping forks filled the air, and the smell of frying bacon clung to her even after long showers. "Smile, sweetheart," a regular sneered one morning as she refilled his coffee. "Life can't be that bad." But it was. And smiling felt like lying. If the apartment was suffocating and the diner was draining, the whispers were lethal. David's success spread quickly through their old circle. He landed a prestigious role at a corporate law firm, his name appearing in glossy alumni newsletters. Pictures of him with his glamorous wife surfaced online. Cocktail dresses, champagne flutes, high-rise parties overlooking the city. And alongside those polished images came his words. "She's still waitressing, can you believe it?" he told mutual acquaintances. Jennifer never had any ambition. She used to scribble in notebooks like a child. "I mean, look at me now and look at her. We were never in the same league." Those words reached Jennifer in cruel whispers. Friends tried to soften the blow, telling her not to care what he said. But how could she not? The laughter of classmates echoed in her memory, blending with the pity in their eyes whenever her name came up. Waitress with no ambition. It wasn't just a phrase anymore. It was becoming her identity in their eyes. Loneliness settled like a second skin. Her parents were gone, her siblings distant. A few friends remained, loyal but busy with families and careers of their own. They checked in occasionally, offering comfort in clumsy words. "You'll bounce back," or "he wasn't worth it." But when they left, the silence returned. Nights were the worst. She lay on her thin mattress staring at the cracked ceiling, tears soaking her pillow until she drifted into uneasy sleep. Some nights she barely slept at all. Her thoughts circled endlessly. What if David was right? What if she really wasn't good enough? What if her stories were just scribbles after all? Depression didn't announce itself. It crept in quietly. Days blurred together. Meals were skipped. Her notebook sat unopened for weeks at a time, her pen gathering dust. Even the act of dreaming felt indulgent, almost dangerous. But eventually, in one of those endless nights, she reached for her notebook. Not because she believed in herself. Not because she thought her words mattered. But because she couldn't carry the weight of silence anymore. She wrote about heartbreak, not hers specifically, but through a character who had been left behind in a busy train station, watching the world move on without her. She wrote about loneliness as if it were a person, one who lived with her, shadowed her, whispered doubts into her ear. She wrote until her hand cramped and the ink smeared. And for the first time in months, she slept peacefully. It became her ritual. The diner by day, her notebook by night. The act of writing became less about chasing a dream and more about surviving another day. One evening, while cleaning her apartment, she found an old USB stick. On it were short stories she had typed during college. Curious, she reread them, clumsy but raw, filled with fragments of the girl she used to be. A spark flickered. On a whim, she uploaded one to a free online platform for aspiring writers. She didn't expect anything. Maybe 1 or 2 anonymous views. Maybe silence. But within a week, a stranger left a comment. "This made me cry. Thank you for putting into words what I couldn't." Jennifer stared at the screen, her heart pounding. Someone had read her words. Someone cared. She uploaded another story. Then another. Slowly comments trickled in. Some were brief, beautiful, or "this spoke to me." Others poured out gratitude, confessions from readers who had felt the same loneliness, the same heartbreak. For the first time since David's betrayal, Jennifer felt seen. Not by classmates who laughed or by customers who sneered, but by strangers who understood. She began carving out small rituals. A notebook by her bedside. Coffee brewing at midnight. Candles flickering as she typed on her battered laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating her tired face. Her depression didn't vanish, it lingered like fog, but her words became lanterns in the mist. Each story she shared online planted a seed, tiny and fragile but alive. And though Jennifer didn't realize it yet, those seeds would one day bloom into something far greater than she ever imagined. Still, on her darkest nights, the vow whispered in the mirror lingered. One day I'll prove him wrong. He didn't know how. He didn't know when. But slowly, silently, her pen was paving the path. The strangers online had no faces, no names, but their words lit something in Jennifer that she thought had died. "This touched me. I've been there too. Please write more." Each comment was a thread pulling her out of the darkness, reminding her she wasn't invisible. She began to wake with purpose. Work at the diner still paid the bills, but her nights belonged to her words. Every story she uploaded felt like opening a window in her suffocating little apartment. Weeks turned into months and Jennifer's following grew. Hundreds of readers, then thousands. Some messaged her privately, sharing their own struggles, thanking her for the courage to put feelings into words they couldn't. She still worked late shifts, still stretched paychecks until they nearly broke, but her notebooks no longer gathered dust. They were filling with ideas, drafts, entire stories. And then came the turning point. One night, while balancing her checkbook, she realized she had saved just enough, not much but enough, to take a risk. She researched self-publishing, devouring guides and watching tutorials on how to design covers and format manuscripts. Every penny she'd scraped together went into the project. Her first book, Echoes of Silence, wasn't flashy. It was a collection of short stories she had written during her darkest days, each one raw and aching with truth. She uploaded it with trembling fingers, convinced it would vanish into the void. But it didn't. Slowly, then suddenly, sales began to trickle in. Strangers left reviews, not just kind words but paragraphs about how her stories mirrored their own heartbreak and resilience. Book clubs began picking it up. Bloggers called her voice refreshingly authentic and hauntingly beautiful. For the first time, Jennifer didn't just feel seen. She felt heard. Within 6 months, her self-published book had sold thousands of copies. The success caught the eye of a small but respected publishing house. They reached out, offering her a contract for a second book. Jennifer nearly dropped the phone when she heard the words, "We believe your voice deserves a wider audience." The second book, Woven Stars, catapulted her career. It wasn't just success, it was validation. The girl who had been mocked as a waitress with no ambition was now a recognized author. Book tours followed. She traveled to cities she'd only ever read about, standing in front of crowded rooms, signing copies for readers who told her she had changed their lives. Jennifer no longer whispered her vow in the mirror. He no longer needed to. He was living it. It was during a charity gala for literacy programs that she first met Lucas Wilson. He was nothing like David. Where David had been loud and brash, Lucas was quietly commanding, the kind of man who didn't need to shout to be heard. His reputation preceded him, billionaire philanthropist, investor in education and the arts. But in person he was disarmingly warm. "I read Woven Stars," he told her after they were introduced. "I couldn't put it down. You don't just write stories, you hold up a mirror." Jennifer flushed, unsure what to say. She had heard praise before, but not like this. His voice wasn't patronizing, not empty flattery. It was reverence, respect. That night turned into phone calls. Phone calls into dinners. Dinners into weekends spent walking through bookstores and talking for hours about everything. Dreams, fears, futures. Lucas didn't just admire her words. He admired her strength, the way she had built herself back from nothing. Where David had mocked her ambition, Lucas nurtured it. Where David had silenced her, Lucas encouraged her to speak louder. Their romance was not a whirlwind. It was steady, like two rivers merging into one. 2 years after meeting him, Jennifer stood under a canopy of flowers in a small, private ceremony. Lucas slipped a ring onto her finger and whispered, "To my partner, my best friend, my inspiration." Her heart, once shattered beyond recognition, was whole again. But more than whole, it was thriving. Together, they co-founded the Wilson Blake Literary Foundation, funding scholarships for young writers from disadvantaged backgrounds. Jennifer knew what it meant to feel small, to feel mocked, to feel unheard. And now she dedicated herself to making sure others would never face those same barriers. Her name appeared on bestseller lists, but it was the foundation that cemented her legacy. She wasn't just an author anymore. She was a symbol of resilience, a champion of voices once silenced. The girl David had dismissed as a waitress with no ambition was now an icon. Life settled into a rhythm she never thought possible. Book tours filled her calendar, interviews praised her voice, and Lucas's unwavering support made each triumph sweeter. At nights, when she lay in his arms, she felt safe in a way she never had before. Safe to dream bigger, to believe that her story wasn't just survival but triumph. And then one afternoon, as she sifted through a pile of mail on her desk, she froze. It was an envelope embossed with gold lettering. The words made her breath catch. "Class of 2022 reunion, you're invited." Her heart pounded as memories rushed back. David's cruel laughter, the humiliation that had once cut so deep. She ran her thumb over the seal, hesitating. Lucas walked in, setting a hand gently on her shoulder. "What's that?" She held up the invitation with a wry smile. "I passed." He kissed her temple. "Then maybe it's time to show them your present." Jennifer looked back down at the envelope, a strange calm washing over her. The woman who once cowered under David's mockery was gone. The woman holding this invitation was ready. The evening of the reunion came faster than Jennifer expected. She stood in front of her mirror, smoothing the folds of a deep sapphire dress Lucas had helped her pick. It wasn't extravagant but elegant, modest enough to reflect her humility, striking enough to show she no longer belonged to the shadows of her past. Her hair framed her face in soft waves, and the pearl earrings Lucas had gifted her glimmered under the light. "You look perfect," Lucas said as he adjusted his cufflinks. His eyes lingered on her reflection, a warm smile playing on his lips. Jennifer took a deep breath. "Perfect is a strong word." "No," Lucas corrected gently. "Perfect is the right word." With his hand steadying hers, they left for the hotel ballroom where the reunion was being held. The moment Jennifer stepped through the double doors, conversations dipped, just for a second. Heads turned. Classmates who remembered the quiet girl with notebooks now saw a woman transformed, poised, radiant, untouchable. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Is that Jennifer Blake? She looks incredible. Didn't David say she was still waitressing?" Jennifer smiled politely as old acquaintances approached, some with genuine warmth, others with thinly veiled curiosity. For the first time she didn't feel like she had to shrink to fit into the room. She stood tall, Lucas by her side, a calm glow about her. But then came the inevitable. David Brown. He emerged from the center of a laughing group as polished as ever in his tailored suit. His hair was graying slightly at the temples, but his smugness was untouched by time. His wife, draped in glittering jewelry, clung to his arm. "Well, well, well," David drawled as his eyes landed on Jennifer. "If it isn't the dreamer herself." He let out a chuckle that carried across the room, drawing attention from nearby classmates. "Still writing your little fairy tales, Jennifer? I knew you'd never change." A ripple of laughter followed, more nervous than genuine. A few faces looked uncomfortable, but others whispered behind hands. "Didn't he say she self-published something?" "Yeah, but nothing big. She probably just got lucky." David stepped closer, smirk widening as he lowered his voice just enough to sound intimate, yet loud enough for everyone around to hear. "I always told you, Jen. Some of us were meant for greatness. Others, well, they get stuck scribbling in notebooks forever." Jennifer felt the sting. It would be a lie to say otherwise. His words carried echoes of the past, the same poison he had once used to break her down. But this time something was different. She didn't shrink. She didn't flinch. She simply looked at him with calm, steady eyes, her silence louder than any defense she could have spoken. The room seemed to shift, the air thick with tension. Classmates leaned in, waiting, curiosity, pity, anticipation all tangled together. Would Jennifer crumble? Would she retaliate? David mistook her composure for weakness, pressing on with a cruel laugh. "You know, some people never grow up. They keep chasing childish dreams, and the rest of us, well, we build real lives. Real success." The smugness in his tone filled the space, but the more he spoke, the thinner the laughter around him became. Whispers grew sharper. Eyes darted between Jennifer's calm grace and David's desperate arrogance. Jennifer lifted her chin ever so slightly. The sting of his mockery still pricked at her heart, but she knew something David didn't. The story wasn't over. Not yet. A hush lingered in the crowd as if the room itself was holding its breath. And while David basked in what he thought was triumph, Jennifer remained quiet, a storm gathering in her stillness. Her classmates waited for her answer, sensing it would come, not in anger, not in tears, but in something far more powerful. She allowed the silence to stretch, her calm becoming its own form of defiance. Because she knew. The reckoning was just around the corner. The silence stretched thin in the ballroom, brittle as glass. Jennifer's stillness unnerved the room more than any angry outburst could have. David, mistaking her composure for surrender, smirked wider, raising his glass as though to crown himself victor once again. But before he could utter another word, the ballroom doors opened with a soft chime and the atmosphere shifted. Heads turned. Conversations stilled. Lucas Wilson had arrived. Even those who had never met him recognized his presence instantly. The billionaire philanthropist, a man whose face often appeared on magazine covers and whose name was synonymous with power, walked with the calm confidence of someone who never needed to prove anything. He wasn't surrounded by bodyguards or an entourage. He didn't need them. His presence was enough. And he was heading straight for Jennifer. David's smug expression faltered as Lucas approached, ignoring everyone else. The billionaire's eyes softened the moment they landed on her, and he took her hand with ease, lifting it to his lips in a gentle kiss. "There you are, sweetheart," Lucas said warmly, his voice carrying across the room. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few women clutched their pearls. Men straightened their ties. Jennifer felt the weight of every gaze turned toward her. But for the first time in her life at a reunion, she wasn't the girl with notebooks and small dreams. She was the woman beside Lucas Wilson. Lucas turned then, addressing the stunned room. "Allow me to introduce my wife, Jennifer Wilson, the most brilliant writer I've ever known." The words landed like a thunderclap. Murmurs spread instantly. "Wife? Jennifer Wilson? Wait, the Jennifer Wilson? The author? I read her book. It was everywhere last year. And she co-founded the literary foundation with him, right?" Jennifer stood tall, her hands still in Lucas's as the realization swept over her classmates. The same girl David had called a waitress with no ambition, was now a celebrated author, a philanthropist, a woman admired by the very man they all idolized. David's face drained of color. His smirk collapsed into a twisted grimace, his eyes darting between Jennifer and Lucas as though searching for some explanation, some loophole in reality. He tried to recover, words tumbling clumsily from his lips. Jennifer, I didn't mean. Of course I always knew you had potential. I was just joking around, you know how reunions are. His excuses sounded flimsy, pathetic, swallowed by the murmurs around him. Jennifer finally spoke. Her voice wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. It carried with the calm precision of a truth sharpened over years of pain and healing. You were right, David, she said softly, but clearly enough that the room leaned in. I'll always be a writer. Only now the whole world reads my stories. The room erupted in applause. Some clapped out of admiration, others out of relief to release the tension. A few classmates even whistled, their pride for Jennifer shining through the years of silence. David stood frozen, red-faced, his power stripped bare. The man who once thrived on belittling her now looked small, pitiful, diminished by the very success he claimed she'd never have. Lucas slipped an arm around Jennifer's waist, his pride evident, his smile unshakable. To my wife, he said, raising his glass, the woman whose words remind us that resilience is the greatest story of all. The crowd followed, lifting their glasses, the echo of Jennifer's triumph filling the room. David didn't lift his. His hands trembled too much to hold a glass steady. His wife shifted uncomfortably beside him, whispers buzzing like bees around their table. For once he had no audience to feed his arrogance. Jennifer didn't gloat. She didn't linger on his humiliation. He didn't need to. Her success, her love, and her happiness were revenge enough. With Lucas at her side, she walked across the ballroom floor, the applause still ringing in her ears. Every step away from David was a step into the life she had built for herself, the life he once swore she'd never have. And as the doors closed behind them, David was left standing alone in the ruins of his own arrogance, staring at the woman who had risen higher than he ever imagined. Jennifer didn't look back. Because her story had already moved forward, far beyond him. Jennifer's story shows us something powerful. You don't need revenge when you've built a life worth living. If you want more stories that hit this deeply, stay with us. Subscribe, leave a like, and share this one with someone who needs hope.